Hi everyone, I'm Kevin Nelson for Catholic Newsbreak. Here's what's happening this week in the news. We begin with news from the Vatican. The first female head of state for Costa Rica visited the Vatican to meet with the Pope and Vatican Secretary of State. Rome Reports now has all the details on the visit.
At the Vatican, Benedict XVI received the president of Costa Rica, Laura Chinchilla. President Chinchilla became the first female head of state for her country after her election in 2010. During her meeting with the Pope, they spoke about the country's education, social, and charitable institutions. They also discussed the issue of abortion, which in Costa Rica is not legal. They remembered the importance of protecting fundamental dignity of human beings from the moment of conception. President Chinchilla gave the pontiff a pair of engravings depicting the forest and wildlife of Costa Rica. Afterwards, she went on to meet with the Vatican Secretary of State, Cardinal Tarcisio Bertone. She was accompanied by Costa Rica's ambassador to the Holy See, Fernando Sanchez.
Looking at other news from the Vatican, the president of the Vatican Bank, Ettore Tedeschi, was fired last Thursday by the bank's Board of Supervisors. The board, in a statement released through the Vatican press office, said that Tedeschi was neglecting his duties amid worsening management problems and that despite numerous warnings, the situation deteriorated further. The statement said the board is now looking for a new president who can promote effective and wider relations between the institute and the financial community based on the shared respect of accepted international banking standards. Several news agencies quoted anonymous sources claiming Tedeschi was responsible for leaking at least some of the confidential Vatican letters and documents to Italian journalist Gianluigi Nuzzi, which helped set off the VatiLeaks scandal. Pope Benedict XVI named Tedeschi, an Italian banker and professor of financial ethics at the Catholic University of the Sacred Heart in Milan, as president of the bank in 2009. One other note from the Vatican, the United States bishops have finished up their ad limina visits at the Vatican, and Catholic News Service now takes us a look back at the Pope's speeches to the bishops.
15 regional groups of U.S. bishops have completed their periodic ad limina visits to the Vatican, which began in late November and ended May 19th. Their time in Rome was spent celebrating masses at key shrines, meeting with Vatican officials, and having audiences with the Pope. In 5 speeches over a period of 6 months, Pope Benedict warned visiting U.S. bishops of the threats that an increasingly secularized society poses to the Catholic Church in America, especially in the areas of religious liberty, sexual morality, and the definition of marriage. Yet the Pope did not advise that American Catholics withdraw from a largely hostile environment in order to preserve their values and faith. Instead, as part of his call for a new evangelization within the Church and beyond, the Pope urged believers to engage even more closely with wider society for the benefit of all Americans.
And finally in the news, Egyptians have begun voting to replace ousted President Hosni Mubarak. They are down to 2 candidates, and as the final vote comes up in June, Christian minorities are anxious to see if the next government will end restrictions on religious freedom and attacks on religious minorities that had been on the rise the past couple of years. Egypt was one of 16 countries that the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom singled out for particular concern in its 2012 annual report, which was released in March. The report said that over the past year, the Egyptian transitional government continued to engage in and tolerate systematic, ongoing, and egregious violations of freedom of thought, conscience, and religion or belief. The report said that violent sectarian attacks targeted Coptic Orthodox Christians in 2011, which left about 100 killed. The report said that this high level of violence and the failure to convict those responsible continued to foster a climate of impunity, making further violence more likely. The classification as a country of particular concern encourages the State Department to take diplomatic and economic actions intended to improve religious freedom in those countries. Well, that is all the information we have for you this time. Please stay with Catholic TV for more Catholic news. Until then, I'm Kevin Nelson, and I'll see you next time on Catholic Newsbreak.